Growing up in Australia, a common staple of TV here you'd be hard-pressed not to know about was a program block on the ABC called Rage. It was essentially a local MTV that focused on playing music videos. A strange development is how it was announced with an Andrew WK performance that the ABC was partnering with the game publisher Bethesda of all things for a loose sequel or soft reboot. Now I know what you're thinking. How could they do a sequel to a dedicated music block? Well, sit back because I'm gonna tell... Wait. Could you repeat that? Uh-huh. What? You mean this has nothing to do with the ABC? What was I... It's a sequel to that game? Shit! Alright, take two. Back in 2011, id Software and Bethesda released a new shooter onto the world, Rage, which was met by a thunderous, this isn't bad, but it could be better. Now they've partnered with Avalanche Software for the sequel to help address the issues the first game had. How did it turn out, I hear you ask? Well, sit back my dear friend, because what I'm about to say will blow your mind. Rage 2 is both an improvement and a regression from the original game. Right, now where's that bastard who told me this was about that Rage? Taking place roughly 30 years after the first game, the player is placed in the shoes of Walker, the last ranger out for revenge after the Authority returns and destroys his home of Vineland. So now you have to journey across the wasteland to meet characters new and old, activate the contingency plan to kill the Authority's leader for good, and of course shoot up a ton of goons along the way. Compared to the previous story, this is an improvement. We have a clear-cut goal with a definitive villain through General Cross, so everything feels more tightly focused. It's just a shame that the story has even less meat on it. If you ignore doing most of the side content, Rage 2's story can be finished in just under 3 hours. There's only 3 characters you do story missions for, and there's only 2 missions apiece before you get the last one. But at least the writing itself is enjoyable for what's there. The tone is more energetic and rave-fueled, with the characters having bombastic personalities. General Cross, believe it or not, is a cross between a Saturday morning cartoon villain and Hitler.
I die, I awake, reborn. My plans.
Desdemonia is a psychotic socialite.
Kill for Desdemonia!
And Clay Clayton? He's literally the oil baron from The Simpsons.
Everybody knows the story of irresistible Clay Clayton, the orphan multi-billionaire extraordinaire.
The only character that's dull, ironically, is Walker. He's an everyman with no distinguishing traits or behaviours and consequently stands out as a white sock in a colourful fruit bowl. And a lot of this can be pinned on the delivery from the male version's voice actor, which just lacks energy that the other actors gave for their characters, right down to the enemies. I didn't try out the female version of the character, so I can't compare the two, but I imagine there isn't much of a difference, to be honest. And if more than anything, Walker would have worked much better as a silent protagonist in both circumstances. One of the biggest shake-ups in terms of the gameplay was the emphasis on an open world. In that respect, the game is essentially everything Generation Zero should have been. It's reactive to your actions and alive with enemies fighting one another, and there's plenty of things to see, do, and chase down. Some activities are better than others. Clearing out the bandit dens, for instance, never gets old, but things like the meteor landings or the convoys, they just feel like busy work that you need to check off for the upgrades you need in order to survive the tougher areas, or just make driving more enjoyable. Unfortunately, vehicle upgrades just net you new driving abilities rather than improvements to the vehicles, and they are your main method of getting around. But you only need to worry about your starting car, not just because it's the only one you can fix on the go, but because it's also the only one you can upgrade. In fact, driving as a whole in Rage 2 is rather sloppy. The cars handle the best despite having very loose handling, but the motorbikes are atrocious. They're so easy to lose control of and feel like they're driving on a floor greased with butter, and I never had any fun trying to get around with them. Racing's also back, and it had potential to be something great, but thanks to the loose handling, it's way too easy to end up coming last thanks to the smallest mistakes. Thankfully, you're only required to do it once, and while it's a minor distraction in the great scheme of things, there is some fun to it. So I wouldn't say driving is completely lost. But of course this is a shooter, and shooting is the real aim of the game, and it is fantastic. All the guns feel powerful with a wide variety to the arsenal, from your tried and true shotgun and assault rifle to more unique offerings like a magnum with manually exploding rounds, or a gravity dart gun that can fling enemies like ragdolls. And that's just the default option. Almost every gun has an alternative fire mode, and it's balls of fun to experiment with what you have, which also includes cyber powers. It's just a shame that it takes a while for all of your options to open up. The bulk of the experience with Rage 2 is just doing the tasks that in other games is the side content. One of these is looking for arcs containing new weapons and abilities, and you have to find these. Without them, combat is just as bare bones as the story, and to be honest, rather generic. But at least the journey ends up worthwhile as greater depth to the combat is revealed. Combat also features a nice little touch that helps set the game apart, a little visual cue when you shoot enemies. If they're armored, your damage indication is coloured yellow to let you know that you're not causing real damage, but when you shoot an unarmored enemy or spot, you get the usual red. It may be one small addition, but it instantly makes the game's shooting substantially more tactical than you'd otherwise expect. The game also looks nice. Rather than just straight up Mad Max Barren Wasteland, Rage 2's Wasteland has undergone a makeover in the 30 years. You still have Mad Max Land, but there's also green forests and murky swamp areas, so there's some much needed colour to shake things up even in the brown and grey areas. This also applies to the enemies, so even when they blend into the scenery, you can still tell what faction they are from a glance. But considering that bright colour palettes have become the current trend in the industry, this does mean that Rage 2's electric colours don't feel individual, but like it's just chasing the same trend rather than trying to be its own thing. Now of course, the game is published by Bethesda, so I'm sure you're wondering whether or not the game is stable. Put your worries away because the game ran butter smooth during my time with it, and I didn't come close to seeing glitches from the likes of Fallout 76. Instead, I ran into some rather unique ones. They're not game breaking, thankfully, instead they're immersion breaking. Rage 2 suffers from, as of right now, audio glitches, where car sound effects will keep looping even when you're not driving, or gun sound effects playing incomplete. I mostly encountered these while streaming to Mixer and encountered them less frequently when not, but that doesn't mean they didn't show up. The worst was when, and I shit you not, the game wouldn't play character dialogue. Characters would move their lips but no sound would come out. Admittedly, in hindsight, this was humorous with some literally one-sided conversations, but it didn't stop it from being annoying and creating a legitimate reason to turn on the subtitles. To fix this, you have to actually quit the game and restart it from Steam, and even then, there's no guarantee that the glitches won't repeat. Hopefully by now, these have been patched. One of the things that surprised me about Rage 2 is that it's a live service game, yet doesn't feel like it. There are microtransactions for weapon cosmetics, but since there's no real third-person perspective outside of driving, and no multiplayer, there's no real reason to buy weapon skins or Rage coins. At least you can unlock some of the skins just by playing, but even then, what's the point? But the live service element isn't just cosmetics, there's also a content roadmap, and I have to confess, it doesn't look too bad. It's mainly made up of global events to change up the experience and add new challenges, and there's nothing wrong with that, as well as some new paid expansions. The only concern I have is with the 2 planned expansions, one of which is already named, and what the overall quality of the content will be like. Will they be made up of content that was cut from the base game to sell down the line, or genuinely all new stuff to see and do? If Bethesda and id manage to take the criticisms this game has received and apply them to the expansions, they could end up reworking Rage 2 into something that is great in every sense of the word. For every improvement Rage 2 made, it either didn't take them far enough or just implemented them in a flawed manner. All of this comes together into a very flawed shooter that has a lot to offer, but not everyone is going to enjoy. Don't go into this expecting Game of the Year material, but expect something that's all over the place and hits as many right chords as wrong ones, and worth grabbing, but by no means a must-buy. Alright, thanks for checking out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you really liked it, then please by all means subscribe to the channel. Sorry this is so late. In the original week I was going to record the audio for this. I caught a killer cold and I've only just now started to get over it, and I've also had some mic troubles, but that's all behind me now. Anyway, for the next game review, I haven't really decided what I'm going to review next. I'm kind of looking at Pathologic 2 or Layers of Fear 2, but who knows, it could be anything at this point, but I'll decide within the week. And for upcoming movie reviews, expect a Detective Pikachu review, and some other stuff that hopefully will include the new Godzilla. I've got all that and more coming up, so like usual, stick around.